I'd like to call to order the Town of McCandless Council's regular business meeting agenda for July the 22nd, 2019. The invocation and pledge of allegiance will be led by Councilmember Kirk.
Good evening. Father God, as we gather here tonight as a community to exercise our liberty, we thank you for our many blessings. The art of governing starts with the art of listening. Father in heaven, grant us grace that we on council will listen tonight with both our hearts and our heads. And to all gathered tonight and watching afar, grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and most importantly, the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes from Council's special business meeting on June 10th, 2019, June 17th, 2019, and June 24th, 2019, as well as Council's committee meeting for June 10th, 2019, and Council's regular business meeting of June 21st, 2019, as submitted to each member of Council?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there any additions or changes that need to be made? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. We have a couple of announcements. The Allegheny County has announced its 2019 vacant property, side yard, and blighted structure program. Applications must be postmarked by September the 20th, 2019. And they'll, September 30th, 2019 will be accepted by Allegheny County under this program. The second announcement is that Allegheny County Health Department is going to be distributing rabies vaccine baits throughout Allegheny County, especially in the parks. That's going to be August 5th through the 21st. And there are instructions on here. You're not supposed to touch them. You're supposed to use gloves. Keep your dog on a lead so hopefully they won't ingest any of these baits. Now I'd like to call to order the public hearing on the implementable comprehensive plan of the town of McCandless. This plan will be voted upon by the Town Council's regular business meeting on Wednesday, August the 26th, 2019.
Monday, August 26th.
Thanks. Monday, August 26th, 2019. All right, Mr. Solicitor.
Yeah, Madam President, before Mr. Betty leads us off with his introduction, I did want to explain for the public just generally the process here. The public hearing tonight is just that. It is a time for council to hear your comments on the draft implementable comprehensive plan. Council will not be debating amongst themselves or with the folks who are coming up to speak. Council will be taking into consideration the comments that are made tonight at the zoning committee meeting in August. I believe that's the second Tuesday. 12th. It's the 12th in August. And at that time, they'll be discussing amongst themselves their own thoughts and feelings on the draft plan, as well as the comments that they hear tonight. So I don't want anyone to think that, if you're not getting feedback from this side of the table, that's why. This is the time for you to come up, state your name, address, and you'll be given 5 minutes to provide comments to council about the draft plan that is available, has been available for review.
Is that second Tuesday? Second Tuesday?
I'm sorry, did I say second
Yeah.
Tuesday? Sorry, second Monday. Whatever that 12th is.
We're having a lot of date problems.
Days.
Okay, Bruce?
Are you ready to dock?
Okay. Not the whole time. The whole time? Okay.
Council, we do have the correct date and time was already announced.
For the committee meeting?
Yes, for the public hearing. Yeah, I mean, for the committee, for the vote.
Right, It'll be the second Monday. I think I misspoke. It's at the second Tuesday.
Wait a second, second,
No, I had it on my calendar for August 26th. I may be wrong. I
Still have a calendar in front of them.
That's when we'll be voting.
yeah, but we're discussing it.
The discussion is at the zoning committee meeting.
and that is the 12th,
Correct.
the second Monday.
Right. On all the committee meetings. Correct.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Pohl or somebody, could you turn the lights down for us? Yeah, thank you. Give it a shot, see which ones go off. That's okay. I think there's enough light. That looks good.
Could you turn it up a little bit? I can't even see to write my notes.
Oh, there you go. How's that?
Okay.
We'll compromise. Okay, thank you all for coming. It's great. I hope you're all here for the comprehensive plan. That would be a great thing to have your input for this. We started this back in February of 2017. We asked Denny Pucco from the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development to come talk to the Planning Commission and Town Council. We had a joint meeting, much like we did when we reviewed the draft comprehensive plan. So Denny came in and explained to us the relatively new concept of an implementable plan. Previously in our comprehensive plans, it was a thick book that had a lot of maps in it, a lot of statistics and things like that. And somewhere within that book, there'd be a group of ideas that were sort of nebulous that would show up in there, and it's like, this is what you're supposed to do. And that was council's guiding document. The implementable comprehensive plan is much different than that. It is a plan which is very specific and gives us ideas. And we have been working on this, as I said, since 2017, and Jim's going to go through the meetings and the input that we have and how we came to establish the groups of ideas that we have. And as you can see, this is a interesting way of doing it. It's called a McCandless conversation, and we have been carrying on that conversation for nearly 2 years now. And we're going to continue that conversation, and we're going to see what your input is on this and see if how we can incorporate your ideas into the plan and see if there are any things that we need to change. And so we're looking forward to doing that. And I want to turn it over to Jim Paschik, who is the principal for Paschik MTR, who was our leader in developing this plan. So Jim, it's all yours.
Well, leader sounds pretty impressive. I'm not sure I was leader as much as a facilitator. But I appreciate what Bruce had to say. I guess I have the clicker too, don't I? About this plan, because we have been working on it since 2017. And I'm going to show you some timelines and some information, but I hope you never lose sight of the fact that this is just the beginning of the process, and the adoption that hopefully Council will decide to do in August is a regulatory requirement of the municipality's planning code, but is not the end of the comprehensive planning process. We have just started and kicked off this discussion and conversations, and it's our hope that this will seed lots more conversations over the next few years as you start to implement the plan. So I have a couple slides I'd like to share with you because I felt it was important to talk about what is a comprehensive plan and then a little more into what is an implementable comprehensive plan that Bruce mentions. And so it's a process that determines community goals and aspirations. It includes suggestions on how we might achieve those goals, updated every 10 years, and is a policy guide and not a legal standing that, as compared to a zoning ordinance, which has legal standing. So the comprehensive plan is a policy guide. It's a framework. It's a documentation of aspirations and goals of the community. And I think it's really important that we not lose sight of the fact that's the role of the comprehensive plan. So Bruce has talked about that they being the town, council decided that we wanted to do an implementable comprehensive plan, which is a little bit different than what people have been doing over the years. And I've identified three things that make it different than a typical comprehensive plan. There's that it's community driven, it's match the recommendations, the capacity of the community, and includes practical implementation steps, as Bruce has said. And I'd like to go through this a little bit more detail. So in terms of community-driven, you'll see all the kinds of activities we did as part of this was developed. We had a Community Day booth, and you'll see some pictures of people holding up their signs if you were there in September of 2017. You may remember that. We had pop-up outreach events. Our steering committee, we had a great steering committee. And our steering committee said, you know, we want to reach out to more people. And so they took the initiative to actually do pop-up events where they would set up a table at the library and at Whole Foods and ask people as they were going in and coming out what they thought about the community and what could we do better in terms of improving the town of McCandless. We had an active transportation working group of experts and residents to talk about how we could improve linking the community better together. We had this amazing steering committee. We had a community questionnaire way in the beginning in January of 2018, and we had public meetings. So this is how we go about doing this kind of community-driven. So I've got some specifics about those. So the steering committee had 15 people, and Andrew, who's representing Allegheny County, we had the community questionnaire, which we had 1,746 responses, which is a very good response rate for the kind of surveys we do in comprehensive plans. We had public meeting in January. We had an ice cream social in June of 2018, and then tonight's hearing. We had the active transportation group of 31 participants. We had the pop-up events. So a lot of things. I took that chart and tried to put it on a timeline. There's no point in trying to get it exactly. The idea is to try and see that we were going through, and throughout the whole process, we were trying to engage the community. If I had a much bigger slide, I would have had another month or another year, because this doesn't stop here at the adoption. It's really important to understand that this process continues as we're going on. So the top ones related to, you can see the middle band of yellow, kind of cream colored, are the 6 steering committee meetings, the community day events, and some other things. So it was important within the context of the scope of work we had and the funding that we had to do as much community engagement we could. And for my 40 or 50 comprehensive plans, this is a really robust, this is probably one of the most robust engagements that I've seen in the 40 or 50 comprehensive plans I've been involved. And that's credit to the town council and my steering committee for insisting that that be the way it was. The second element is matching the capacity of the community. One of the things that I criticized on the old planning, the old comprehensive planning process, was that there were all these pie-in-the-sky dreams and all kinds of things, but they weren't told as to how to do them and whether they even could be done. But they were really cool ideas, and so they would go into comprehensive plans. And the implementable plan tries to scale that back a little bit and try to focus on what is possible, try to understand the capacity of the community, and then as a result of that, figure out what we can do in a reasonable amount of time, whether it's 5 years or 10 years. So based on community interest in the issues, there's little or no planning. The second bullet's an important one. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. There's little or no planning yet in place for the issues, because there are other issues that are really important in the community but have their own planning going on, their own active engagement, and so we'll talk about that in a later slide. But the little funny little cartoons, if you haven't looked at the plan, the little weightlifting guys, the 1 barbell, the 2 barbell, the 3 barbells is a graphic depiction of how difficult we think that recommendation is going to be. And the money is a reflection, it tags the area of the plan that discusses the cost associated. So we engaged the community. We even on the survey asked for people who might be interested in getting involved to send us their contact information, and we've shared all of that information with staff here so they know who to contact in the future, people who wanted to be involved in it. So it was a really terrific response to that as part of the questionnaire. And then practical steps. So when we developed an issue, we developed and studied the issue in the context of whether we would be able to make practical recommendations. So, one big issue that I hear in lots of other communities is that we have a drug problem. Well, in terms of comprehensive planning, that may be challenging to figure out specific steps we can take as a community to resolve that problem. So we try to focus our issues on the kinds of things that we can actually make a difference, that we can move the needle in a positive direction. And that's one of the tests I asked when we were working with the steering committee, and we had lots of key issues that they were interested in. I'm going to drop that up. And I would say, can we make a difference in this community in the next 5 to 10 years? And so that was one of the ways that we tested whether we could do something in terms of the implementation steps. And then the goal of this plan was to provide very specific steps on the plan. We did not want to just say, you ought to do this, and you guys got to figure it out. We tried to lay out a roadmap on how you could proceed step by step, even to the point of listing, in the first 6 months, you ought to do these steps first. So we tried to be very specific. So we took the responses from the questionnaires, we took the discussion at the steering committee, we took the information we gathered from the public meetings, we talked about things at the pop-up events. We tried to kind of then take all of those inputs, none of which were then individually the most important, but as a collection, we looked at all the different responses that we received from the community, and we asked our steering committee to try and rank and prioritize those as to what were the key issues. And one of the reasons we do that is because the old comprehensive plans might have had 50 or 60 things you ought to work on. And we wondered why these plans weren't getting done. And so we developed as part of this implementable planning process, we said we're going to really narrow the focus and say, okay, over the next 5 years or so, we'd like to work on maybe 4 or 5 things. 4 or 5 things. And we think if we can give you greater information on how to achieve those and stay within those 4 or 5, that is what we will be able to achieve and make progress on to make a positive difference in this community. And so the steering committee had the most difficult task of taking 20 or 30 or more issues that they thought were really important in the community. Lots of ideas, great ideas. We asked if they could accomplish something in the next 5 to 10 years. That weeded out a few. And then we asked them where would they fit in terms of a hierarchy or priority. And they came up with, I asked for 4, they gave me 6. The active transportation connectivity. They were interested in connecting neighborhoods and connecting the community to North Park. There was an interest in redevelopment, and that was broken down into 2 areas. Redevelopment was defined as the Route 19 corridor and what could happen along there, as well as the Blazer site. We were asked to look at the community identity and public engagement. The EAC, members from the EAC were really concerned about the green space. They've done an amazing job of inventorying all the green spaces, but they wanted help on what do we do with these green spaces? What's the best, highest and best use for those parcels? And then community activities in terms of what kinds of activities would the community benefit from having and sponsoring. So I'm going to go through those fairly quickly.
Excuse me, Madam President, point of order. We called this public hearing 15 minutes ago. We opened it to invite the public for their comments. I would just ask Mr. Pashik quickly wrap this up so we can hear from our constituents. I think it's important that they have a voice, and I don't want to see folks leaving because of the late hour. Thank you.
Mr. Patrick, how much longer is your presentation?
Well, I can make it very quick. I can go through. It's really at your discretion. I mean, we've been working on this for 2 years, and this is the culmination of 2 years of hard work, and we're hoping to have 30 or 40 minutes.
Mr. Pashik, we advertised and we had a presentation of your process, and it's very impressive. But tonight we advertised for a public hearing.
So how about if I go through these very quickly then? Or do you want me to stop from here?
I'd like for you to go through them a a little more quickly, because I think that the people here having some of that information would help them with some of their comments. You might be answering a lot of the comments or questions that they might
But I
have.
will go very quickly.
Thank you.
So the active transportation connectivity, this was based on responses from the survey. We looked at different areas that we could figure out ways to create walkways, where we could create connections. And we ended up focusing on 3 areas of the community to where we could do connections. And here's an example of one near the Blazer site. And this is the level of detail in terms of defining where the walkways would go, the trails would go, and what the cost would be associated with those. And then we heard concern about the cost, and they were significant costs. I won't suggest that they weren't significant costs. And one of the things council has to do is just sort out from priorities what it is that they want to do in terms of doing that. But it is not an inexpensive thing to do in terms of trails. And so there's also some questions at the Planning Commission about the lack of sidewalks, and this plan doesn't preclude any of that from happening. This plan is a point in time where the steering committee said these were the priorities we think we'd like to address. That doesn't mean there aren't many other priorities that also should be addressed as well. We had community activities and programs. We looked at benchmarking what other communities similar. And then as you start to develop programs, then there's the question of space. And so as the committee that might be formed to do this takes a look at this, they'll start to look at the benchmarks in terms of what space is needed and what's available now. There's space available now. The green space and sustainability, we were trying to address the green spaces the EAC had identified. I think there were 20-some, 26, 27, 28 spaces. So we went through and individually looked at and recommended each one of those 28 what might be the highest and best use. And this is one of those. And the question to the Planning Commission was, why are so many high priority or first priority projects? It's because whenever we had a green space that also connected to another key issue in the plan, we felt that was warranted a high priority focus. So this was one that was brought up at the Planning Commission, and I think it's a really important issue, but this was one of those things where the committee felt that there were already great things. You're an MS4 community, you were already working on creating a plan to meet the regulations through the EPA, and we felt that that was already great stuff happening, and so we didn't feel the comprehensive plan needed to address that. That may or may not have been the right decision, but the idea of an implementable comprehensive plan is to figure out what we can be working on that's not already going on. And so that's what we did for that. Some cost-benefit analysis. On redevelopment, so this is we had the two areas that we were looking at. This is the Route 19 corridor. And some of you who came to the public meeting may remember some of the visuals that we had there, the kinds of things that we were addressing, and the challenges we were doing in terms of suggesting some changes to the RC zoning to make it a little more form-based, a little more heavy emphasis on buffers and those kinds of things. I added this slide because there was some concern we understood through staff about the extension, and what we said in the plan was the Planning Commission might want to look in the future at the possibility of extending that orange area at the bottom of that map, which is an RC zone, up to Hillview, which is near the top, where going into the school. And so I understand there's some concern about that. Blazer Drive, I'll go through these very quickly. These were some images developed. We looked at 3 ideas, putting a community center there and a water park, a natural water park, expanding the proposed senior housing into that area, and to just creating an open space for that. What we came out of that was we really thought it was most important was for Blazer Drive redevelopment to be an open process and to ask. We felt the issue was that in the community, developers would come in and dictate what was going on, and we were hearing, and what we suggested is that there be a public process in advance of any future development coming in to talk about what the issues are for the community, and that's what we proposed there. Public engagement, I'm going faster.
Okay. Trying to be patient.
So this is a a continuum of how much the community is engaged by the town. Our steering committee felt we were at the left side of that to inform, and the hope was that through this process, we would move it to a more engaged process. I'll let people talk about that later. In addition, we captured a few other not key issues, but issues that the steering committee felt should be memorialized in the report, although not a lot of information was provided. And so the next thing is what's next. And the idea is that in August, the town could adopt the plan as recommended by the Planning Commission. It could recommend minor changes and then adopt the plan. It could recommend more significant changes to the plan and restart the planning process, or they could decide not to adopt the plan. Those are all possibilities. And this is a quote from Allegheny County, who reviews all the comprehensive plans in Allegheny County. And they spoke very highly of this planning process. And that's it.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. Hopefully that helped answer some questions and maybe some concerns that some people had. So, as we've said, this is the public hearing to talk about the comprehensive plan, so that's what our comments will be limited to, this subject. So, the way we'd like to do this, so kind of expedite the comments so that everyone who wants to talk can speak. When you come up to the microphone, just say your name and your address, and then the clock, Maria will start the clock, and then you have 5 minutes to make your comment. So once a person is up, if you would have like a second person on deck kind of halfway back behind them, so I'm not like, oh, who was next? Okay, the next person up, so when they're done, the next person can come up. All right? So we're opening it up to public comment. First person, please step forward. And the next person can come back up on deck behind her.
My name is Alicia Del Lago. I live on 8828 Memorial Drive. My concern is the zoning change in the Memorial Drive area. In your website, you talk about a card sent to every resident in McCandless, invited them to voice their opinion about the comprehensive plan. I did not receive that card, and as far as I know, the people living in the affected area did not receive it either. It is my opinion that the James Penske Company, the consultants hired to do the comprehensive plan, don't have their offices in McCandless, but in the north side of Pittsburgh. That area is totally different, has a totally different population than McCandless. They decided, without any consideration on how the comprehensive plan would affect the residences of the area, make the residential area commercial. It is also my opinion that consultants do the same thing in every community. They connect the dots and make everything on the main highways commercial, without any consideration for what is there or how they could better serve the residents of the community. At the last meeting, I heard that no one wants to live on a 4-lane highway. That could be that could not be farther from the truth. The residents of Memorial Drive and the side streets in the area enjoy being near a main road that is well maintained in the winter. Not everybody can afford to live in a new home in a development. Some of us prefer to live in an older home with character and established landscaping. Real estate values are directly related to supply and demand. Making that area commercial will devaluate all the properties in the area. The only one who wants to locate a business in Perry Highway is someone that cannot afford to be in McKnight, where the action is. The plan itself refers to a portion of Route 19 Highway, the Route 19 Perry Highway corridor, and the Blazier Drive area north of Ingomar Road, has deteriorating, vacant or underutilized properties. To add more commercial area will only add to the decline. Commercial property that is being used for residential only is value for the land with little or no value put on the buildings. Here is an example of what I'm talking about. I will compare the sale price of a house zoned commercial and another in Memorial Drive that is a residential. The house in 8313 Perry Highway, zoned commercial, with a 2019 county assessed value of $170,400, was sold for only $85,000. On the other hand, the house on 8844 Memorial Drive, with a 2019 county assessed value of $253,000, sold for $290,000. The residents of the area that the comprehensive plan wants to make commercial maintain their homes and continue to do upgrades and improvements. That will stop if it becomes commercial. Why will anyone improve a property that will be torn down? The value of existing commercial property on Perry Highway will come down as more property is added to the supply. I'm asking, who is going to benefit by a zoning change at this time? That's my opinion. I do not want to live in another Babcock Boulevard, and that can happen very fast if the zoning is changed to commercial. If Memorial Drive was zoned to commercial, I could open my photography studio and the neighbors could not be happy with not only the traffic generated by my studio, but also with the commercial delivery trucks. I have here a photo that shows what I'm going to say next. The question I ask is why the township that has maintained the Memorial Park.
I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you for your comments. What we'd like to do is just, if we could keep just to expedite for time, we can just keep the applause down. Go.
I'd like to read a letter my mother, Terry Wilcox, from 8751 Prescott Drive wrote. I'm her daughter, Shannon Wilcox. Citizens of McCandless and board members, before our family chose McCandless as our new home, we lived in Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix developed quickly into suburbs lined with identical pink McMansions. Little thought was given at the time to infrastructure, schools, medical access, etc., until one day the ambulances and fire trucks couldn't reach a home in time to save it or the residences. Phoenix suburbs learned to require new developers to include infrastructure such as water, utilities, medical, and school construction in their plans for new homes. They also found that prospective buyers were looking for community. They planned sidewalks, porches, and walking trails in the neighborhoods, along with mixed retail use to lessen long driving trips and support less cars on the road. They were active in supporting mass transit of differing sizes. You could take the neighborhood van to the library or to your job. I understand the need for planning. It is important, however, to preserve what is best about our area in making these changes. People choose to move here for its convenient location to major arteries and the city while having maintained a neighborhood identity. People have suggested to us, specifically the Sheetz Corporation, that our property value will increase with a commercial zoning change, led by allowing development in a neighbor's front yard. To this I reply, all value is not measured in dollars. Please let me repeat. All value is not measured in dollars. We didn't buy our house to resell it. Our value is in proximity to excellent schools known nationwide. Our value is in knowing our neighbors and raising our family in a quiet cul-de-sac. Our value has dramatically increased by maintaining our homes with the intent to occupy them, not rent or sell them. Parts of the comprehensive plan speak to value added. Walking paths linking different neighborhoods, parks including education about health and environment. I encourage everyone to read it. But suggesting McCandless Crossings as an example of the direction we should take is not in our best interest. We do not want to be cookie cutter. We also do not want businesses making the decisions on growth for us. We hold the trump cards with our location, education, and natural beauty. The plan also speaks the idea of identity, promising small artistic vendors or businesses to occupy the commercial areas, someone you would want to be a neighbor with. I'm not here in person tonight as I am running the Cheesecake Factory. I have managed small businesses as well. I can attest to the difficulty in opening a small, quirky business in today's economy. One has only to look at the latest casualty at the bistro, which was Magoo's, which was many other things, to ask what we can do to attract and retain small businesses. One has only to read neighborhood Facebook pages to see people offering $150,000 for a zoning supporting their needs. We cannot take the easy path to maintain and enhance our McCandless. What seems like a fiscal gift, as one council member said at our last meeting, will have strings with repercussions. Be careful and patient, my neighbors. Educated about what other people want to do with the biggest investment that you all have. These choices impact many generations of family to come. What do you want for your family? Thank you.
for your comment. Next.
Hi, my name's Dawn Miller. I live at 235 Pine Creek Road, and I'm in support of the implementable comprehensive plan. But I just want to warn council to be mindful of the fact that I think the connected walking trails along Pine Creek would be great, but I want you to be mindful of the fact that we have flooding issues that, in my opinion, in the 8 years that I've lived here, continue to seem to get worse. And we also have traffic issues on that road. And so I'm hoping that in connection with the work that you want to do as part of the comprehensive plan, that you be mindful of the traffic situation and perhaps take a traffic study into account, because I think there would have to be some additional traffic control measures added if we have people coming in for a walking trail, and the flooding issue, so that any investment that we make is preserved. That's it.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mike Graypatch. I live at 454 Winterwood Road, and I was a member of the steering committee for the plan. When we look at this plan, trying to come up with a solution for 28,000 residents of McCandless across several square miles that we have in a variety of different neighborhoods and areas, we have to come up with a plan that balances all of the needs and the future. When we look at the future of McCandless and say, where do we want to go from here? We like the lifestyle. We like living in a comfortable, nice community. Walking paths are a big part of that and can be a part of that in the future. It's very much a trend across the country. The nature of the image of the community we're going for, which the plan talks about, is what we all want as well. And that's a conversation and an agreement on what is that. And I think a lot of us are saying the same things, of we want it to be a place where we all want to live. And we want others who are like us to come here as well and help keep the community vibrant and strong and growing and developing the way we want it to be. We look at the community center and the community needs and the need to create recreational options. When we heard over and over from all of the members of the community talking about their needs, they didn't have places to meet. They didn't have places to have family gatherings. Because if you look at North Park, which we talked about a lot, all those pavilions get taken up right away. All the other areas get taken up right away, but there's a variety of different spaces available that could be used, but there's just not a connective tissue to make that happen. So as we looked at all of these options, we talked about it for a couple of years, and we had really great input from a variety of members of the community and organizations and the school district and all the various players. We're laying out a framework and a place to start the conversation and continue the conversation about what happens and where we go from here. Because we know essentially it's a case of we have to start the conversation somewhere, not just say, I don't like this because it might impact me, or I don't like this because it might impact me. And I understand all those concerns, and that's why this isn't the legally binding document. This is the start of how to turn it into action, how to turn it into tactical delivery day in and day out. So I ask you as the the town council to look at that and understand it and say, where do we start the conversation? Where do we continue the conversation? And how do we develop an idea of what McCandless is going to be 10, 20, 30 years down the road? Because those investments will start today, and that delivery will start today. And we want something that will be here for a long time, not for the next 10, 15, 20 years, but hopefully for the next 50 or 100. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. No, ma'am.
May I take my extra time to this young woman up here? I had 2 minutes and 30 seconds extra.
Yeah, it's only each individual gets
Even
5
though I
minutes.
had additional time.
Correct.
Okay.
May it please the board. My name is Attorney Christina McCaveney-Malkin, and I represent the property owner of 8924 Perry Highway. Her name is Dorothy Winter. She's 94 years old, and she's currently suffering from Alzheimer's and is living in nursing care. I have brought with me her son and daughter, who are her power of attorneys, and have authorized me to speak on their behalf here for you. I wanted to read to you all the controversial issue that I guess has created some problems for the residents on Memorial Drive. And then I wanted to expand on that because Mrs. Winter's property is at the corner of Hillview Drive and Perry Highway. And it's surrounded on 2 sides by commercial property and on the side adjacent to it with a multi-use property. It's listed as being a 2-unit property next door. This is what it says here in the comprehensive plan because people seem to be taking it a little bit out of context. The Planning Commission should consider changing the zoning designation of the parcels fronting Route 19 south of Hillview Road, which would be Mrs. Winter's property, to RC, residential commercial, where not designated institutional or R5. It should consider changing the definition of the RC zoning designation to no longer include single-family housing, which is virtually non-existent there anyway. Problem that we have is this house is zoned residential, single-family. It's next to a duplex, and it's surrounded on both the properties across the street on Perry Highway. It's right across from the Westview Bank, and then there is the gas station and Representative Turzai's building next to it. And there's an actually drive between those 2 properties that goes to an additional commercial property that fronts on Perry Highway. The biggest problem that I have noticed in your zoning ordinance is there is no cohesive policy for what's going on Perry Highway. I have sat through public hearings where we've dealt with the problem that this property is zoned this and this property is zoned this. There's no cohesiveness for anything that seems to be fronting on Perry Highway. It's created a lot of controversy for Sheets. It created a lot of controversy for multiple other zoning, hotly contested issues on Perry Highway. What you do need is something like this RC designation. What it permits, because I read the zoning definitions in this section, is multi-unit residential property. So you could put a couple townhomes on this property, which would be something that would be saleable. You could put a small doctor's office or something to that nature that would have to go through council's approval and be very carefully considered by this body. And I know you all, because I've sat in front of you and have had that privilege where you've carefully considered each and every one of those uses. The commercial uses that I see in residential commercial they're conditional uses. You would be able to add conditions to them. This is not something that would be considered in a negative way, but it does allow for multi-unit uses that front on Perry Highway, which would make the property saleable. Mr. Winter and his sister, Mrs. Grainer, can tell you that this is the street that goes right to McKnight Elementary because Mrs. Grainer taught at McKnight Elementary for many, many years. Mr. Winter is trying to stay the property right now to fix it up so it can be sold. we've had significant problems selling this property because of its location and because it's zoned single-family residential. What we ask for is what this comprehensive plan is looking at, not having a small peninsula of land that is single-family residential surrounded by commercial and multi-use. That's what your comprehensive plan is trying to do. Make it flexible, but at the same time, make it so that you can apply the appropriate conditions to make sure that you can see safe and reasonable development along Perry Highway.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is Dean Winter, and I represent the Winter family at the 8924 Perry Highway piece of property. I've lived in this area my whole life, which is a while. And for the people who are on Memorial Drive, I lived on Memorial Drive for a long period of time. In fact, that was one house that was mentioned. I lived over there. I would never want to see, in all honesty, Memorial Drive anything than what it is right now. However, I have difficulty with the property that I'm on. My mother's house is at 8924 Perry Highway, and we are right on Route 19. We're at the middle of, or the corner of Route 19 and Hillview Lane. Therefore, everyone that has interest in our property or has talked to us about us for interest in the property, because it is almost an acre, has always asked, what is it? Well, it's residential. And because it's residential, unless they're planning on putting up another single-family dwelling, there's little or no interest in being on Route 19. You can say that, we live out in this area and nobody wants to be on a 4-lane road. As long as I lived on Memorial Drive, I would agree with that. However, with the traffic that runs back and forth to North Allegheny Intermediate and Carson Intermediate schools, the traffic is sometimes back to Hoy up the hill and the Hoy up Hillview Lane. I'm not trying to make that a industrial corridor or anything other than what it is right now, but I would like to see the property that I'm currently at to be residential commercial, so that if council allowed someone to build something else on it other than a single-family dwelling, then it could be marketed that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Okay. And if there's anyone that wants to speak after her, please come up.
My name is Tammy Yargates. I'm at 8844 Memorial Drive. We have the old house. And I can tell you right now, like I told you the last time I spoke, I completely agree with Alicia. And I really do not want to see this area rezoned. I've already shared my concerns with the council, so I won't waste your time doing it again. Just to say that, we hope to grow old in this house and to leave it to our daughter whenever, everything's said and done. And any kind of rezoning for commercial will devalue our properties, and that is not our goal. And I want to also add something that Alicia didn't get to. The Memorial Drive, the memorial out there, the war memorial, is not being maintained. It's in very poor condition. The bushes are all overgrown, and the grass is growing up. It looks horrible. If the council's interest is to beautify the area and make it look good, then they need to maintain this, certainly. It's very disappointing, and it's unfortunate to live behind something when we're trying to make our property look better that takes away from the beauty of our area. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Troy Horning, 8912 Perry Highway. I want to definitely start with the plan itself for what Bruce and the other gentleman has been saying about this transparency and everybody getting cards. We obviously did not. If it wouldn't be for Mr. Gregg over here notifying everybody 2 weeks ago about this, we probably wouldn't have even known that this was occurring today. I'd also like to echo Alicia's point here about the residential property values themselves. She made some great points about how the values of those locations will go down or go up based upon what this decision is made. Obviously, we are in this location for the character. We are in it for the schools. We are in it for the close proximity to pretty much everything else you could still want, but maintain that community feel. There's no issue with any of the homes that we have on our area themselves. Everybody maintains their property. All of our neighbors are nice. There's absolutely no reason to even, as Bruce said 2 weeks ago, give the commercial companies the weaponry to even come in here and engage in these kind of activities. I mean, that's crazy. There's an age-old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This property, this location, this stretch of highway is absolutely not broken. The next part I'd like to address is the number of vacant commercial properties that we already have within commercially zoned areas. How many have become blighted? How many have been open for years and years and years, and yet now we're looking at continuing and adding additional locations where another commercial property could go in and become vacant or not even be developed. Additionally, along with the plan as well, rezoning it to residential commercial. 2 weeks ago, it didn't even appear that everybody really understood what that residential commercial zoning was. I think we need to go back and revisit what their actually definition of residential commercial is to even begin to plan anything further from that. Again, nobody wants to live on a 4-lane highway. I encourage anybody to go look at how many homes are actually up for sale. The 8924 property, I'm not sure what the concern is with that one. However, anybody else that has listed in the corridor within the last 2 years has sold quickly. There's absolutely no issue with that. And that being said, we do love the character of our home. We are in our forever home, and we, as long with everybody else back here, we'll do everything we can, fight tooth and nail, to make sure that everybody sees clearly to vote against this plan. Thanks.
Christine Shipley, 9690 Buckingham Drive. So I'm against the plan. I think there needs to be a lot more thought in this. I've been around the world in every continent except for Antarctica. And if you don't understand traffic, it is ridiculous. To go 5 miles in DC could take you an hour. We do not want that much traffic in this area. We don't need more choices of shops. We don't need more. We just don't need it. There's too much shopping to begin with. We don't need all that on Route 19. I don't live off that corridor. I feel sorry for those people. There's so much now to begin with. The traffic would be horrendous. A couple other things. $9 million, is that correct, for trails and sidewalks? $9 million could go toward helping the flooding in this area over by the Golf Academy and off of Pine Creek. $9 million for trails when we have so many wonderful trails in North Park. I don't understand that one. $4 million to build a rec center. That's just to build the rec center. That's not to buy the land. That's not to maintain it. That's not to staff it, to fund it. What's the cost after that? Why do we even need a rec center? We have a wonderful park. We have so much here. We've got the library. There's just so much wonderful stuff here. I don't think we need a rec center. That's my opinion. Now, others, of course, I understand. But I just think that this plan, there's too much money involved without a good idea of what we really need. I think a vote, and I guess there was a vote. I know I had voted for it. Maybe many people didn't. But a true vote of what we really want in this community. And I know traffic is not one. More housing, low-cost housing, absolutely not. I saw a note here. It says, what can we do? Hold on here. I'm not sure the page. What are ways that McCandless can encourage more people to move in and existing residents to remain in town? Do we really need that many more people in this town? I mean, I don't want to sit in traffic for 20 minutes just to go 4 miles. It's starting to get really congested. So keeping the level of people is great. We don't want to tear down tons of green space. Let's clean up the dilapidated houses, improve those. And do we really need 5 Kmarts, or not Kmarts, but 5 of the same stores? Do we need, what do we have, 8 shopping centers that have grocery stores? We just don't need everything. We have enough. More is not always better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chuck Mazer. I live at 326 Sunset Road, and I'm here today to question the comprehensive plan. I think there are a lot of issues that are unresolved and should be looked at more carefully. One of them is, it was alluded that there's 4 or 5 top projects, and it turned out to be 6 top projects that we want to implement. I think we ought to look at each one of them and cost justify each of the projects and determine whether we can do that with a tax base or whatever increases we're going to need in taxes. I also think that that should be identified more closely on what the costs are. Secondly, the Ingomar Business District was overlooked and not included in the plan. They should be part of the plan also. Christine mentioned several things about the cost involved, and my understanding is the community centers, for instance, which has some pluses and some minuses, but needs to be cost justified. I understand $5 million was a number that was given as the cost of that. I understand that was not including the ground to build it on, or the staff to staff it and maintenance of that building. I think that needs to be looked at more carefully. And all of these should be looked at in regard to what it's going to have on our tax base and what's going to be really involved there. Those 2 items of the comprehensive plan would include estimated 5 years of property tax just for the trails and for the community center, both of which are nice but can be justifiable, and I think that's what needs to be done. Another thing is I understand that once there's going to be a vote next month on implementing this plan. I would suggest that we don't have enough information to do that and to approve it. I think it should go back to committee, and a lot of these items should be looked at again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
My name is Michelle Maggio, and I live on 8820 Memorial Drive. When we bought our house 12 years ago, it was everything we said we weren't going to buy. It was on a 4-lane highway. It was a 2-bedroom, and here we are 12 years later, still in it, and it's our forever home. We have a 2-year-old son now who's going to go to the NA school district because of where we live. I think our street has a sense of nostalgia that is good for the community. Anyone I talk to say they love our street. Oh, that cute little street. We have the Craftsman home. And it's just, it's our forever home where we plan to stay. And we are making upgrades. We just put an $8,000 retaining wall in, and we are not going to continue to make improvements if we're not going to be able to stay there. And I agree with, on the memorial site, it is looking kind of shabby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, my name's Kimberly Murray. I'm at 8814 Perry Highway, which is actually the house that starts Memorial Drive. I've lived there for 56 years. Grew up in that house. That house has been updated top to bottom. When we wanted to add the detached garage, we had to have it come in front of the board and make sure that it would never be occupied as livable space. It can only be single-family dwelling, which we agreed to, obviously, because we wanted to continue just to live there as a house. Along with Alicia and the rest of the street, all of those homes, I've seen them since I was big. And to be in North Allegheny and to be in the school district and to see those homes change, I think would be detrimental. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hello, Greg Martin, 9402 Babcock Boulevard. I want to start by saying to commend everybody that was involved with this plan from start to finish for the last 2 years. It's a very well-executed plan. There's a lot of marketing research that was done. There's a lot of data in it and a lot of really good ideas, and you guys are to be commended for it. My issue with the plan is the idea that with one single vote, we are going to vote to adopt or not adopt one plan, one implementable plan that doesn't have much of a plan of implementation. There's 6 key things that we're focusing on, but each one of them has a series of priorities in it, and how are we going to vote to adopt rezoning Memorial and spending money on trails when maybe the bigger priority is putting sidewalks where our kids walk to their bus stops? So I think that plans like this are They're a legislative issue that obviously happens locally and all the way to the national level, where we have one big plan, tons of room for pet projects in it. With one vote, we're going to adopt it or not adopt it. And even the adoption or the refusal to adopt really doesn't mean much whenever each individual line item then needs to be approved or rejected individually by council. My recommendation is don't throw the plan away, keep it in a desk, and bring every single one of those, bring those topics up individually rather than approving a plan that's going to affect every citizen of McCandless completely differently. You're going to you have a lot of different opinions on every line item in it. How are we going to just rubber stamp it or throw it all away? Thank you.
Hi, Rita Martin, 10585 Grubbs Road. And I think what people are missing is that no money's been allocated for anything on here. It is just ideas. And if you don't have ideas, then you get things like McCandless Crossing, which is a nice community asset, but no plans were ever really made by people in this room or anyone in the community to help develop that. And that's what this is about. It is not set in stone, and I would never want to see those homes leave because they are beautiful. And that's just that's a zoning issue. You can't do that. That has to be done by the zoning board. So it's not about this is what's going to happen. These are ideas, and you can discuss them, you can look at them, you can talk to people about them, but you're not going to say with this plan that it's set in stone. Communities need to think about the future, and that's what this does. And there were 50 different ways to find out about this entire plan, and we have seven ways, Town Crier's website, Facebook, YouTube. But democracy is hard work, and you got to get involved, and you got to come to the meetings, and you got to look at your website, and you got to look at your mail, and then you can, instead of just coming on the day of, you've got to look at what's going on all along. You guys have done a great job on this plan, thought about it, you've interacted with people, and I commend you, and I hope that you will vote on it and vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Good evening. Alan Shuckrow, 8861 Roosevelt Boulevard. Following up on what the last few speakers said, I agree. This is really a nice plan. There's a lot of great ideas in it and a lot of specifics. And I heard earlier the President Zachary said that you will vote on the 26th of August. The website says you may vote. I suppose it's up to all of you to decide whether you will or not. The sort of interesting thing about a comprehensive plan is, as was stated earlier, it may not have the legal effect of an ordinance, such as a zoning ordinance. However, because this is an implementable plan and it is very specific, I am a little concerned, as the gentleman said earlier, that you adopt this and you feel that you may have a blank check moving forward, whereas there are a lot of expenses here, and I think things do need to be prioritized. Another concern I had was, Mr. Paschke said he wanted 3 or 4 things, and then the committee gave him 6. And then at the end of the plan, there's another section of 6 or 7 pages that has 5 or 6 more things. So that seemed like there were other issues that were thrown in at the end, and I don't know if you approve those, if those are going to be funded. Ms. Shipley mentioned earlier more affordable housing. Yeah, that was kind of thrown in at the end. I would contend that one of McCandless's strengths, and one of the reasons so many people move here, is the reason that my wife and I came back here. We grew up in Franklin Park and McCandless, respectively, was because we could get into a house in McCandless at an affordable price when we were young and we weren't really making a lot of money, and I think that still holds. So I think that's a strength of McCandless's throughout, and I think we need to keep that, but I don't think we need to have a focus on affordable housing. That's not one of the 6 strands, but it is in this plan. So is that part of what's being approved? Yes, it's been a long process, and Ms. Martin says you shouldn't just show up tonight. I take a little bit of offense to that. I've been following it. I think a lot of people are here maybe tonight for the first time and shouldn't be castigated for that. But it's been a long process, but that doesn't mean, if this is truly the start of a conversation, that it has to be approved immediately. I think there could be more going on before it's approved. I'm afraid that if this is approved, it may not be the beginning of the conversation because everything is in this document, and that may be the end of it. So let's hope that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make a comment? Yeah. And if anyone else after Deb, please get on deck.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Sagan, and I live at Parkland Drive in McCandless. Thank you all for entertaining all the comments and listening tonight to the residents. And I was on the planning committee as well, and some of the comments that were made tonight, I just wanted to clarify and remind people that first of all, I'm so glad to see so many people in attendance this evening, and to see that McCandless residents are concerned about the next 15 years, because that's what this plan is about. It's a conversation over 15 years. And my understanding is that if council approves this, not everything in the plan will be recommended or will be adopted. If you choose not to plan, then you don't have a roadmap for your future. And that's exactly what we're doing with this plan over the last 2 years. That was our intention, to make recommendations that council will have the power to approve or not. And some of them, funding that was talked about tonight, that was in the plan, there are estimates, and also if you see later on in the agenda tonight, even in tonight's meeting, that grants and funding from the state will be available to implement some of the ideas in this plan. So not all of the funding will be coming directly from the town budget. I really don't think that council has an idea of working with a blank check, that they will prioritize is my hope. And we've already seen that with the recommendation for the mobility plan after we had our proposed sidewalk that's going in finally here on Grubbs Road as part of the connectivity plan. Council decided to look at sidewalks in the future and really prioritize where the sidewalks, where the crosswalks, where the connectivity elements should go. So I think this is a very thoughtful plan, and yes, there will be changes made. It is fluid. It's not set in concrete, and I hope that council will consider adopting it and making changes as changes are needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment? Anyone else have a comment?
I have one comment.
Up here?
Tom King.
Please come up on deck.
I live on Oak Ridge Drive, 10093, for 30-plus years, and I see this bike walkway going in, and I know it cuts through along Pine Creek right up into our subdivision. And when you pull in our subdivision off Pine Creek, the traffic is going modestly 35. I doubt it. You come in quickly. That path has come up. Some driver riding a bicycle coming right out of there could be in danger, could get hurt very easily by the driver of the car. It's dark. What do you expect? Somebody's going to get hurt, and the driver's going to be held responsible for that. The other factor is you're looking at putting parking places in back of our wall or back of our sign. We don't know who is going to be parking there. Are we going to have to be responsible for putting security systems into our houses? What is it going to do to the value of our homes? I'm real concerned with this. I just think it's a danger, especially for the homes on the lower level of Oak Ridge. That's my saying.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments?
Jason Singer, 8314 East Van Buren Drive. Thank you for letting me come up here and speak in front of council. I too was on the steering committee. I enjoyed the process. A lot of great ideas came out of it. Attended the very first meeting where we had the implementable comprehensive plan speaker come in actually and speak to what implementable comprehensive plans are. I fear that we've come 2 years later to this point and we've strayed between an implementable comprehensive plan to an old plan and back again. I spoke at the Planning Commission meeting and worry about that we're rubber stamping something through that has some imperfections into it. I stress that we don't simply just pass this because we've spent 2 years on it. We've spent $80,000 plus with the consultant on this. There are concerns as expressed by the residents here today. My other concerns are, during steering committee, were we alluded to enough sense that these were items that were identified through surveys, through public outreach and things that wanted to happen in the town? How much was steering committee kept abreast of how much it would cost? I know in things of that matter, the cost came at the end once the ideas came up. Ideas were presented first, costs came second. My worry is that now that we're at the end and we start to put these costs together of $10 million in trails and $4 million in community centers, in hundreds of thousands of dollars in civic classes, are we too far down this road now that we're worried to say, stop, let's think about these big ticket items before we do it? I caution you not to just rubber stamp this through. I caution you to look at it. Look at what the cost implications are to the township. $15 million over 10 years is a significant chunk of money. I don't want to see my property taxes increase 60%. I also worry about the fact that bear with me. I worry about the fact that we have certain things in here, such as the zoning of a private piece of property formerly known as the Rave Cinema site. It's mentioned in here, and I spoke to this during steering committee, that it's thought of process of stormwater in a park like that. Council already had looked at that in previous sessions. They shot it down because of environmental impacts, and now here it shows up again in our comprehensive plan of something that we should look at and do. The funding has left for that now. Now we're asking to look at it again and find additional funding for it. I worry, and the common goal here today is everyone says, don't worry about it. You can approve it, but we don't have to do it. It comes in front of council. As Jim said here at the beginning, this is a process that's continuing on the timeline, okay? If all of you are new in council in 10 years and someone else comes in, this was the plan that you approved. This is the plan that your replacements are eventually going to say, our previous council approved this. They wanted this to happen. These were the big items. That's the ideas you're giving when you approve this plan, that you're giving the blessing that these are the implementable things that the township needs to do. Now, you can sit here and say, we can find funding and we can find grant dollars in this. It still needs to be cost effective. Thank you.
Hi, Kim. My name's Jack Casey. I live at 10030 Timbar Court in the Oak Ridge Plan. I have a number of things I want to talk about. First of all, I support Alicia and her cause. Memorial Drive is beautiful. And that memorial really does need work. And if you guys aren't up to the task, I'll get the veterans to clean it up. Number two is I agree with the Winter family. That property is on...
After the meeting, sir, please come by and let us get your information.
Absolutely.
We're looking for organizations to help us keep maintaining areas. That would be
Great.
awesome.
I work with Defenders of Freedom and Heroes Supporting Heroes.
That would be
They'd be
perfect.
happy to help.
That would be perfect.
The Winter family, they are on an island, and if you can up their property value, the new property owner will pay more taxes, and they'll keep my taxes down. I like that idea. Third, I don't see in a comprehensive plan any prioritization. It just kind of is out there. So I think that might be helpful for the community. And I also don't see anything about that 1/10 of a mile that is the missing link from Pine Township almost to Westview Junior High School, where they have that 1/10 from the top of the flats that comes down to Longview. You have this much road to walk on. You literally take your life in your hand when you walk from the flats and go into Oak Ridge. And really the same is true for Wagon Wheel, which is on the other side. something needs to be addressed there. We don't necessarily need a sidewalk, but if you go right past Forest View, the road is nice and wide. And we really thought that when they did the plan up north on the flats, it was going to go all the way down, and they just skipped this one little area. It's just insane. So please address that. And as far as the bike or the path that they want to put from Oak Ridge down to Vestal, that path is there, and it's great. It really doesn't need much. Just a little bit of cosmetic improvement would go a long way. But if you want to put in a parking lot at the bottom of our neighborhood, please keep in mind, last week when we had that torrential rain, that the bottom of Oak Ridge, I actually called the township to report that it was flooded. Cars were coming through, and it was really awful. And the road, the Pine Creek Road, sits quite a bit higher than where you want to build a parking lot. So we would recommend that is a flood zone, and you leave it be. If somebody wants to park, they can park right there on the road. I don't think you're going to get that much traffic. And that's all I have to say. You guys are great, and I really appreciate all the effort you put into running this town. It's awesome. Thank you
for your comment. Anyone else?
Good evening, Council. My name's Ron Eichner, Eichner's Farm, 285 Richard Road. We're the last full-time farm in the town of McCandless. As a fourth generation, we look at things very serious, and I can't follow a lot of meetings. I got to stay outstanding in my field, and that's what farmers are about. However, I'd like to add a few items to this comprehensive plan. It's very discerning and disheartening to me to hear that stormwater isn't a priority whenever it's really a concern and an issue to my family and our livelihood, because we've been impacted for almost 40 years in a very negative way. What I'd like to see is it all started 38 years ago with the first stormwater revision of the Forest Oaks development that's on two sides of our property. And they didn't follow through, meaning the developer or the town was originally approved, and basically the problem still exists. Open creeks that should have been piped with 4-foot pipe, and Thursday a week ago our driveway overflowed, our pond overflowed for the first time since my family owned our property since 1897, cut across our cousin's driveway and washed it out and eventually went down into the creek. But on the stormwater side, based on what I like to see done, because we're impacted in a very negative way and have issues and concerns, it really started 21 years ago. I was invited by council to review the Forest Oaks file. However, the only concerns myself and my family had was the stormwater and building setbacks, told by our zoning officer, town manager, and president of council in separate conversations, neither an issue. 20 years ago, we were denied an invite to a public hearing on the change of the Forest Oaks second and third phase property. Again, my concerns were stormwater and building setbacks. There's bad stormwater revision that was approved, and the buildings ironically got 34 feet closer to our property line. One thing that hurts agriculture is the encroachment of development upon it. The worst case scenario is multifamily on agriculture. That's what we have, but there's things that really have to be looked at. The revisions that were done on the second and third phase of Forest Oaks, the stormwater revision, if you will, I couldn't address it professionally because I'm not an engineer, but I'm probably the most qualified person in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to understand stormwater. So my dad and I, we had to go to an engineer to review the whole comprehensive stormwater plan at a cost of $10,000, only to be told that the plan is in violation of a number of the town's stormwater ordinances, along with the Pine Creek watershed plan. I put a lot of that weight on the responsibilities of the town engineer, so maybe their qualifications should be reviewed. Also, what should be looked at is everything's designed for a 100-year event. Now, there's two things in a 100-year event. One is a 100-year 24-hour storm, which everybody designs for, but I think what's overlooked, it should be designed for the 100-year, 1-hour event, because that's the event that causes all the damage. So if we're going to design for 100-year, and I've been saying this for 40 years to the state, to the county, to local government, but nothing's ever been done. The second item I'd like to have addressed, and I thought something like this would never occur and impact my family in a negative way, is our water supplies. Our two water supplies are heavily contaminated by sodium and chloride levels from winter maintenance of the developments above us. As a resident and a property owner of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we have a constitutional right to clean water. And this problem's been going for 5 years, and I haven't gotten anything but lip service from council. And I'd like to see things corrected in that fashion, because as the last full-time working farm and a long-standing citizen, I think our concerns and views should be heard. So I'd just like to thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Anyone else? All right. If there are no other public comments, then we will.
Well, I would like to move into, for consideration, comments made at the July 8th, 2019 zoning committee meeting, since some of the people were not there and couldn't make the comments.
This is just a public hearing.
So, can we consider those comments too?
I think we've already considered those comments.
Okay.
All right, step up.
I'm Gerard Hoffman. I live at 9629 Hilliard Road. First of all, I want to compliment everybody that worked on that master plan. Looks real nice, hard to implement. I want to make sure that everybody knows this isn't the first master plan we've seen. I suspect there's probably, and I'm going from memory, about 6 of them. And we didn't do too much with them. One of the big things is stormwater. I worked on stormwater ever since the 1970s. And we were way ahead of the curve for a while. Same with sidewalks. We passed a sidewalk ordinance in 1975. We've made progress, but there's more to be made. As far as to implement this plan, I look at the cost factor, and I want to make sure this is not imposed, that every step of the way we take a separate operation. A master plan is really a blueprint. That's what it was and is. And we had a good blueprint when we adopted in 2010, I believe, was the last one. And that was done by our planning commission. And it was a good plan. And that's one that started this RC zoning, or overlay district as we call it. I think it's fine. And I think just be careful with the costs. I know that community centers, we've looked into community centers long ago. We had what was called the KCOR, which was Citizens Advisory Committee on Recreation. They were responsible for the operation and the purchase and donation of these 200 plus acres that we have as green space, or in the land bank as we call it. As far as trails, the Vestal Trail is up and running and has been since about 1995. And if you haven't toured it, it's nice to do that. Other than that, you've got a job for you. I'd be careful though. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else, any comments? Okay. Hearing none, then the public hearing for the implementable comprehensive plan is closed. Council, a 5-minute recess. Finance and Personnel Committee. Start with that one.
Yeah, we're only missing Bob.
We're back from our recess.
Get that gavel out.
Getting ready to.
Okay, you ready?
I am.
I move to approve checklisting number 7 dated June 7th, 2019 through July 3rd, 2019, totaling $1,071,741.13 as submitted to each member of council and posted on the bulletin board and town website.
Is there
Second.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions by anyone in council? Any comments or questions from any citizens on this motion? Okay. Hearing none, there's been a motion and a second, and time for comment. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move to adopt resolution number 16 of the 2019 series, a resolution to amend resolution number 23 of 2016 by naming current signatories authorized to sign documents relative to the town of McCandless defined benefit pension plans.
Second.
There's been a motion, a second. This is just a housekeeping matter to, so our assistant town manager can sign pension plans. Any comments, questions from council? Comments or questions from citizens? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I move to adopt resolution number 17 of the 2019 series, a resolution authorizing the temporary investment of the town funds by Assistant Town Manager Tricia Greathouse, and to make transfers of said deposited funds from and to accounts only in the name of and owned by the town of McCandless.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any comments or questions by anyone in council? Again, another housekeeping issue. Anything from the citizens? Comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move to adopt resolution number 18 of the 2019 series, a resolution establishing a minority business enterprise contracting policy for the town of McCandless as part of the overall purchasing policy.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any comments? We've been knocking this around for a couple of months now. We've gone over it pretty extensively. Any additional comments or questions by anyone on council? Any comments or questions, or any comments from any citizens? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Zoning Committee.
Move to approve the preliminary and final subdivision application of the plan known as Walnut Court Plan of Lots for Walnut Court LP located at Dell Lane, Ingomar Terrace, Ingomar Road intersection, conditioned upon approval of its Pennsylvania Highway occupancy permit as per project 25448, pages 1-2, prepared by Trent Corporation, dated April 8th, 2019, with the latest revision. Do you have the latest
That
revision?
was, it was April
Oh,
8th.
April, okay.
So, 2019.
I second the motion.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions from council about the Walnut Court plan? Any comments or questions by any citizens about this plan? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Move to approve a preliminary and final land application, development application for the plan known as Walnut Court Plan of Lots for Walnut Court LP for 27 townhouse units located at Dell Lane, Ingomar Road, and Terrace Ingomar Road intersection, which is adjacent to the interchange of McKnight and Ingomar roadways, conditioned upon approval of its Pennsylvania Highway occupancy, signing of a land development agreement, and granting a modification to the grading ordinance to permit fences at the top of the slope of the slope as shown on the plan as per project 25448, pages 1-36, prepared by Trent Corporation, dated April 8th, 2019, with the latest revision being July 16th, 2019.
Second the motion.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there any comments, questions from council? Hearing none, any comments from any citizens? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public Safety Committee.
Move to. That's me.
I'm sorry.
Move to appoint Jeremy R. Howe
As a police officer for the town of McCandless, conditioned upon the following: passage of a physical examination, psychological examination, and physical agility test pursuant to the memorandum of understanding between the town of McCandless and the MPOETC certification.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any comments or questions by any council members? Any comments from any citizens? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Move to appoint Sean J. Davies as police officer for the town of McCandless, conditioned upon the following: passage of a physical examination, psychological examination, physical agility test pursuant to the memorandum of understanding between the town of McCandless and the MPOETC certification.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from council? Any comments from any citizens? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public Works Committee.
Move to reject all bids for the rehabilitation, paving, coating, and fencing of 3 tennis courts and 1 basketball court at Devlin Memorial Park.
Second.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, you can explain.
Just for the public's information, town received bids on Friday from 2 different contractors, and in looking at those costs, there was still one missing piece of the puzzle. There were actually 3 parts to this: paving, recoating the surfaces, and then fencing. We only received bids for 2 parts of it, the paving and the recoating. Those 2 parts together totaled our budgeted figure. So we know that the project would come in over budget. It was our considered opinion of staff that we should not pursue the project any further, reject the bids. In the process, we did receive information regarding an alternative that has to do with filling the cracks and then recoating. That would be roughly a $70,000 cost savings to the town and would add about 5 years of life to the courts. We think that that's a viable alternative. I actually went out over the weekend and looked at one site that they've done work on, and it's holding up well where they've done the work.
Any other questions from council or comments?
Just on Mr. Groom, upon analyzing those rejected bids, what was the nature of the overrun? Was the original budget number too low? Was there a miss on the quantity of material?
No, I think the budget number was too low.
Okay, all right.
I don't think it took into account all of the different parts, although paving costs are higher than what they were last year in general. But I think the overall cost of the project was just understated.
Thank you.
Quick question here, if I may, to Mr. Grimm. During our prior discussions at one of our other meetings, I think it was you that pointed out that the nature of the surface wears better, oddly enough, on a road than it does on a tennis court because the tires on an ongoing basis compress the surface. Is that still a factor here?
The specification for this project actually stated that it would be a tennis court mix of asphalt, which is more similar to an ID2 asphalt, which was the old type of asphalt that you would see on a road and would hold up much better under a lighter condition, less stressful condition on the asphalt itself. Rather, that played into some of the pricing. I can't tell you for certain, but we were specifying the correct mix of asphalt for this project.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council, comments? Any comments from citizens?
Debbie Sagan, Parkland Drive. I just wanted to, I don't know what the discussion was and how much you've looked into this, but I know that North Park, Allegheny County, has the same issues when they were paving the tennis courts over at North Park. So you might want to talk to Andy Bechtold if you haven't, because I was at a meeting where he spoke to this and had done some research on it. So just as a suggestion.
Get hold of Andy, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments? Now, this is about the courts.
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Jeff Jeser, Oak Ridge Drive. I played my first game of pickleball at a YMCA camp 2 weeks ago. It's fun. It is on a converted tennis court. I wouldn't mind if you looked at somehow equipping courts to be playable for pickleball or tennis. I don't know if that's a possibility. I think people would enjoy that.
We have it.
But then,
They already are.
We have pickleball.
even on these courts that are being outfitted.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But thank you. Any other comments? Who names the game pickleball? All right, there's been a motion and a second, and time for comment. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Move to adopt resolution number 19 of the 2019 series, a resolution approving the First Amendment to the contribution agreement between the town of McCandless and the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for the Pine Creek Road and Route 19 intersection corridor partnership project.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion, a second. You want to give a short summary of this? A super short summary, 30-second summary.
This is a project that was done a few years ago to widen the bridge, Pine Creek, and the intersection coming up to Route 19. The Commonwealth contributed $1.7 million. We've asked, through some negotiation, they actually added another $70,000 to that figure. It's taken us a while to sort out all of the cost. There were cost overruns, some savings in places. So we've finally been able to negotiate all of the numbers out. The numbers the council has, that total number, $974,000 is what the town's contribution will be to the project, and that will complete this. What we're doing tonight is amending the agreement to reflect the new state figure. And then once that's completed, we'll get a final invoice. Council can take action on that invoice. That's enough.
That was perfect, thank you. Any questions or comments from any council? Any citizen comments? It's a nice new intersection. It was a long time coming. All those, there's been a motion, a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Recreation Committee.
I move to adopt resolution number 20 of the 2019 series, a resolution establishing an activity advisory committee to the town council.
Second.
This is also a resolution. It was first thought of and talked about during the comprehensive plan meetings, and we felt like it was important enough to go ahead and get this started. We've talked about it a lot, and I think we've come to agreement of what that's going to look like. Any questions or comments from any citizens?
Madam President, one comment. The resolution does appropriately reference the Exhibit A that speaks to the matters that council amended in putting this together, but the document is not titled Exhibit A. I would just ask that for the administratively that we add that Exhibit A to the title to that.
All right. Good catch. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Any comments from any citizens? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll put that on our media sites tomorrow to start advertising for that. There will be 7 citizens, 1 from each ward. Something for you to look at. New business.
Move to accept and approve the deferred retirement option plan agreement and election of Police Chief David R. DeSanti, Senior of the McCandless Police Department, effective July 1st, 2019.
Second.
Okay, there has been a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments from council? Any comments from any citizens? Hearing none, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Move to adopt resolution number 21 of the 2019 series, a resolution authorizing the town manager to request multimodal transportation fund grants from the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development.
Second motion.
There's been a motion and a second. You got a 30-second summary of that?
There'll be actually two grants submitted on behalf of the town under this program. One will be to put together some final pieces of the sidewalk puzzle from McCandless Drive down to Ingomar Road. It will include putting a pedestrian bridge parallel to the Grubbs Road Bridge now, and completion of the McCandless sidewalk to Blazer Drive. The second piece of this puzzle, and I think you'll be happy about this, is a connection from Wexford Flats down to Longview and thus the Oak Ridge plan.
The whole thing, is that on the, is it on the website?
The total project
Just
will
so you
be
can read it,
about
yeah.
$680,000 between the two areas. But the second piece of that puzzle was to complete the sidewalks along the Wexford Flats down to Longview, so then people from the Oak Ridge plan can move up into the Wexford Flats.
Any
I
comment?
rarely get applause, thank you.
But these are the kind of grants that we were talking about. We were talking about the comprehensive plan. You find these monies and then you do things as you get the monies. This is what we're talking about. Any comments or questions from anyone in council? Any comments from any citizens? Your applause said it all, I guess. Well, this is a comment.
Sagan, Parkland Drive. I know I have skipped a few meetings here, but as I recall that there was the, I think you called it, Mr. Kirk, you initiated the mobility priority plan for the sidewalks in our town when we were discussing the sidewalk on Grubbs Road. And I don't know if I'm allowed to ask questions now or not, or maybe you could comment on how, and I'm glad to see that the Longview sidewalk is being initiated, but how did that fall into the prioritization for the mobility plan, the ordinance that was adopted? So if at some point when that's appropriate, if that could be addressed, I appreciate it. Because it seemed like that was spoken to that night. We waited so long for the Grubbs Road one, and now there must be other sidewalks in the town as well that need to be addressed. And how did this one jump to the front of the line? I'm just curious as to how that happened. So thank you.
Just to try to answer your question, Debbie, staff and the engineer are still working on the details of the prioritization plan. We've given council a list of criteria that the engineer would be looking at to review. And the next step in looking at those criteria will be to assign point values to that so that we can then attach a priority list. This project or these projects were simply two that had been discussed at length at previous council meeting, and knowing that we had done work in relation to having both projects underway or taken on, that's why we went ahead. We've already done some of the groundwork on both of them, so it was an easier way to approach these grants for this year next year, my goal would be that we would have the priority list together, and any future grants would be based on that priority list. Okay.
Any other public comment? All right. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This is a time for public comment. You can speak to anything. It does not have to be agenda related. Please come up and say your name.
Name is Joe Marble, 9499 Catherine Drive, McCandless. I don't want to keep repeating what we're saying, but I just want to know, because you just don't have a lot of enthusiasm about the number of dogs. One person taking care of 20 dogs, they're all strays, 24/7. Is that not a health issue? Is that not a health issue at the residence and a neighborhood? What's too many dogs? 20, 40, 60, any kind of number. First responders, let's talk about that. There's a fire, second fire. First responders couldn't get on the property. Dogs are ready to attack them and all that. They couldn't enter the property. Their lives are in jeopardy. Look back at some of the tapes, just the fires going on. It was on Channel 11 News. So the question is what is a number? We're looking for a number that a person can take care of in the health and the welfare. And you're talking about, these other people are talking about their property values. What's this person doing to our property values? Our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is really a nice neighborhood. You let somebody up there, if they were in your neighborhood, you'd be down here faster than can be. So I hear like our member, council member, he don't want to do nothing. We got good laws on the books. You got a number? You don't have a number. City of Pittsburgh has it. Westview has 3. After that, you have to get a license. So, I'm glad this is recorded, because if we got to go to the county on the health, because there got to be a number a person can take. And I'm surprised that the kennel, it's given this lady a dog and other ones a great number of dogs. The dog's health can't be an issue here. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Come up here.
Yeah, just please come up.
Jack Owen, I live on 9528 Park Edge Drive, and I know you've heard from me before, so I'll be quick. But just to talk a little bit about that animal ordinance, we really do think that it's important to put a number on it, and you can see the facts of what's happened here. We had a fire on January 27th with a lady who had probably 20 dogs and who knows how many cats, and who knows what else she might have had. It was a safety issue. It was a safety issue for the firemen to get in. We put our volunteer firemen, who are volunteers, they're not paid, we put their lives at risk with this kind of thing going on. I've had rats in my yard. I've had mice in my house. I've had all kinds of issues. And, there needs to be, I'm hearing that you might strengthen the general offense code. I think it's 701.08. Or you might strengthen it, put some more fines on it, but not put a number on it. I think that's a mistake. I think we need to consider very carefully a number of animals, as Mr. Markle said, that you can take care of. I know, she had 20-some dogs. Almost 10 of them died. Okay, that's more dogs than I've ever had in my life and that I ever want. Okay, she killed 10 dogs, but she's a great animal lover. And we have animal lovers. We have people with craziness, with alligators in the Allegheny River. We have all kinds of stuff going on. And in this community, we had the horse situation. And I'm not an expert on it, but a horse died and 2 others starved up by Graybrook, and the priest at the church below it finds rats. And that's how we find out that some person abandoned 3 horses. 1 of them died, and there's rats in the neighborhood feeding on the horses. Is that what we want in McCandless? I think we really need to consider the health the safety and the welfare. And I know my house I have not felt safe in for a number of months. We don't need alligators. We need a number of dogs and cats. I would suggest 5 sounds too much to me, but if somebody really wants to have 5, a combination of dogs and cats, and they can take care of them without putting their neighbors at risk, okay.
Well, wait a second.
Thank you very much.
I think that alligators are dangerous animals. I don't even think they're allowed.
I don't know. I would hope not.
Yeah. Oh, so, well, I don't.
But
I'm
you have a
just
general
wondering-
offenses
just wondering
code.
what I brought up.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Scheidler at 9534 Park Edge Drive with my wife Amy here. Just speaking on behalf of, I live directly across the street from 9531. And I've logged a number of phone calls to the police department for barking late at night. Many times, Steve, it gets a little bit crazy up there. We're directly across the street. And I think the key here, too, is to consider the fact that with that many dogs and the different personalities of those animals, you can create a real nasty little situation. My wife and I, we sit on our porch in the evenings because, we just like to watch people walk their dogs around the neighborhood. I've seen no less than 5 encounters where several dogs come off of that property because they're unchained, they're not restrained, there's no fence, no electric fence, no other means to prevent them from doing that, and attacking other people and their dogs as they walk by. I've had to get off my porch several times to chase them away. And a number of times in the fall, I'm out raking leaves. They have pit bulls. They come flying across and challenge me in my front yard. Now, I like dogs. I think pets are wonderful things. I have no issue with pets. These aren't pets. These are a nuisance. 17 dogs? I mean, and, to the other Jack's point, how many dogs can one person handle? When you watch her walk around the neighborhood with 5, 6 dogs, which are, some of them are horses, how is she going to control those animals? And I know on several occasions she's let them go. So I would ask that there be at least some strong consideration for a limit on the number of animals, and also a very stiff, maybe escalating fine for this, because $25 for a dog barking, the guy's he's a radiologist. He doesn't care. He'll pay the fines just to make everything go away all the time. He doesn't care. So I'd ask that you take strong consideration for putting a limit on the number and also increasing that fine and creating a stiff fine. Because when the police show up, hey, sorry, we can't do much. So thank you for your time.
May I speak before you?
Yes, sir.
Weren't we advised at some point that that the law does not permit a specific number of dogs, limitation on a number of dogs? I mean, these three people have gotten up and said, give us a limit on the number of dogs. I thought that I was informed through counsel that is not an option that's available to us. Can you speak to that, counsel?
So first of all, we don't comment on any specific enforcement actions that
Sure.
may or may not be pending. But I can say generally,
That's what I'm asking the general question.
Generally, the directive, the advice and the directive that were given, I think my understanding that there was a consensus on council, we were going to attempt to step up enforcement of the existing ordinance, which addresses the symptoms. A lot of the symptoms that this gentleman has raised, such as noise, such as other nuisance type activities, rather than, and I think the discussion was generally, look, you could have someone who, with a large property, a good pet owner who could handle 7 dogs, and they could be, say there's 7 small dogs or some collection of dogs and cats where it's not causing a nuisance. Whereas trying to put an arbitrary number can be problematic because it's not necessarily always apples to apples. So the advice that was given and what we're currently in the process of is working on the enforcement of the existing ordinance. And there was discussion, I believe at the last meeting or maybe 2 meetings ago, about stepping up those funds, because as this gentleman also pointed out, I don't know when that $25 was first assessed there, but I imagine it's been quite some time.
91, I think it was.
Pardon me?
91, I
Yeah,
think is
right.
the
So
ordinance.
inflation alone should get that significantly up, and I think there was also consensus on council that, look, the thing, it has to have an escalator, because if you have these repeat offenders, it's not a deterrent if it's not a financial hit at some point to comply with the ordinance or fail to comply. So, sorry, that was sort of a long explanation, but that's where we are right now. And then, council has kept all their options on the table to the extent that this does not correct not just that specific problem, but other problems that we get complaints about throughout the town.
Okay. Yeah, and just one more comment then, Gavin, to that point. I believe there are other communities that do have a numerical limit.
There are. There's no question
Right.
about their other
And
ordinances.
so I
out
don't
there.
understand why that couldn't be, I guess
I would suggest that there are a lot of ordinances out there that may, if challenged, may not always hold up.
Fair statement.
So
Okay.
that, I'll just leave it at that.
That's fine. No, I appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
So, Alan Sakala, I live at 9516 Catherine Drive with my wife. There's a number of our neighbors here tonight. They're not all speaking. There were some people that left. It was a long meeting. And I will again tell you that in the last month, I've spoken to many of our neighbors. And there is a great consensus on Park Edge and Catherine Drive, whether they're represented here tonight, but I can promise you that this is a serious issue. I've had neighbors say, if I knew what I knew today, and Catherine and Park Edge is a beautiful part of our community. It's a great place to live. I thought it was a gem to have those kind of lots. I'm told it was one of the original larger plan in McCandless. We love living there. But I've had several neighbors, more than one, in the last month tell me if I knew what I knew today, I would never move here. I also will tell you that depending on what happens, I'd look at every one of you. If you lived in a community and you had a neighbor, I don't care if it was across the street or but within 100 yards of you, that had 20 dogs, 15 dogs that barked regularly many nights. Correct? Right. Okay? So this is not a random fact. Would you live in that neighborhood? Would you buy in that neighborhood? You go to Siena, there's a mural about good government. Allowing this type of nuisance to occur in a community like McCandless is wrong. Good government addresses it. Gavin, I appreciate it. I got a nice letter saying, and I can understand because I've done a little bit of talk to some of my friends from other communities and some attorneys, and I can understand the legal challenges that may occur when you put a number on it. But sometimes doing what's right isn't clean. Many laws aren't bright, clean lines, okay? I know plenty that the governments roll out that are fuzzy, blurry lines, but they still do it. Whether you go after it on count, and my wife and I just got some property in a community where the people in that community sit on a board like you, just like you, and they've got a whole section on pets. And they've addressed it around the issue of nuisances and kennels, okay, because normal pet owners don't put multiple animals in kennels. So there's lots of ways, if we as a community and you as representing us want to address this, you can. But what we don't want is we don't want to see our community, our neighbors, and I don't want to go after any one person. That's not our intent. But I want to go after an issue that none of you would buy a home or live in a community that had 20 dogs next to you for many, many reasons. You wouldn't. Okay? All we're asking is, in representing us, creative counsel, creative structuring of ordinances, please address us on this behalf. Now, another thing I'm going to tell you is, do you need 100 signatures? Do you need 500 signatures? Do you need 1,000 signatures to take this seriously? Because as I've been talking to many of my colleagues in associations around the community, and I've got far-reaching connections, as do my neighbors, we'll be glad to put a petition together to address this. It's serious. And I will tell you, the average rank and file of our neighbors that live in McCandless don't understand this either. Because when I pose the same question to them that I just posed to you, would you want to live in a neighborhood that where your neighbor had that amount of pets that make that kind of nuisance in many ways, and I can define it in about 7 or 8 bullets. And the general consensus, almost unanimously, is no. I'm going to tell you, the people that live in McCandless do not think allowing this, however you address it, to not allow it. I look to you for your creativity, but we cannot not address this. That's all I ask. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm the last soldier, and I feel like that I'm going to be a bad follow to what a wonderful speech that was. My name is Amy Skull. I live at 9522 Park Edge, and I join all my neighbors in just telling you that this situation has to be rectified. My husband and I have had many instances with this individual and her plethora of pets, if you will, her dog specifically. We have called her. We've requested the police come out and have her quiet her dogs. She has dogs barking all through the night. We could not have windows open because you can hear the dogs through the night. So clearly, if it's a kennel, it's an outdoor facility. You're still going to hear the dogs. I was shocked to find out that there were 20 dogs up there. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but 20 is ridiculous. And my husband and I have also been subject to having her let dogs off the leashes and rush into our yard. We live diagonally from her, and she thinks it's funny. I don't think it's funny to be rushed by a pit bull, by a dog of any size, and it was to the point where I had my own pet out front, and one of her dogs attacked my dog. I think that's ridiculous, and it's nuisance is an understatement. But again, I just want to stand here in support of my neighbors. Something has to be done. Find a way to get this situation under control, because whether it's 10 or 20, it's way too many, and it's not helping the safety of our neighborhood, and it's not helping, again, the home values, because I sure as hell wouldn't want to live here anymore if she's allowed to have that same number of pets in her home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Amy Bistocchi. I live at 9444 Catherine Drive, same neighborhood as all of these folks. And I just want to go on record and reiterate what Steve mentioned, the danger of this amount of dogs. I live kind of behind the property that we happen to be talking about, and there has been more than one occasion where a pack of dogs has come running down the hill and into my yard, where I have a child who's a teenager now, but he used to be much smaller. And clearly, it's shocking, scary, and you have to run into your house. So, I mean, who among you have to run into your house when you live in the town of McCandless because you fear the number of animals that your neighbor is hoarding at their house? So, I agree we need some sort of escalating fines to this type of thing, and then clearly you need a number to determine, what is right and what's wrong here. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.